This morning I want us to look at two passages in the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 20 is one of the places in the Old Testament where we are given the list of what you and I commonly call the Ten Commandments. And then we're going to look at an event that's pretty familiar. If you're familiar with the Old Testament, pretty familiar to you there, that happens in Exodus chapter 32, where we have the creation of the worship of a graven image. And so in Exodus chapter 20, and God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on earth beneath, or in the waters below. And of course, the commandments continue after that. But then look at what happens a few chapters later in Exodus chapter 32. It says, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me. So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord. And the word Lord there is, in the Hebrew text, is all caps. Meaning that the word that is being used here is the covenantal term for God. For God. And so when Aaron says, talking about the golden calf, hey, we're all going to gather here tomorrow in front of this golden calf that we have fashioned for ourselves and worship God. Man, talking about creating a graven image, this goes right to the heart of it. And you know what can happen. You and I can look at that passage, and again, if you've come up through church, you know all about the golden calf thing, and you've known about it for years. But we can look at a passage like that and think, how dense can the folks be? Melting down jewelry, fashioning a golden calf, and then they're going to go and kind of, surround this thing and worship it as some kind of image that they have crafted for the God. And so we can kind of look at that, put it at arm's distance, and relegate that to the past and people being really kind of dense and not thinking right. I want to suggest to you this morning, man, having a graven image is an easy thing to do. It's an easy thing to do. And we may not be going home this afternoon and melting down jewelry and creating a little something for the coffee table. But a graven image, we make graven images anytime we edit God into what we prefer. We make a graven image anytime we edit God into what we prefer. Want to have a little fun with you this morning? We're going to have Throwback Sunday for a couple minutes this morning. And I was going to sing a little jingle, but I don't want to have you impacted in that way. So I'm going to tee up here a commercial that aired in 1974. I was 10 years old, 1974. And I can remember seeing this as a kid, and there were all kinds of variations of it. It was for Burger King. And I was sharing this with Melia, and we were kind of looking at it, and I said, yeah, man, I remember this as a kid, 1974, I was 10 years old. And Melia looked at me, she goes, well, I wouldn't have remembered it because I wouldn't, you know. Why do people say things like that? You know, you're in the house of the Lord and looking to be affirmed and encouraged. Why do people say things like that? So for the over 50 set, you'll remember this commercial. Now, Karen's going to play it here in just a moment, but what I want you to do is I want you to listen to the words of the song that the lady at the Burger King counter is going to sing. Because I'm going to suggest to you this morning, that's the way a lot of folks want God.
Juniors and 4 Coca-Cola. And will I have to wait long if you make 1 Whopper with no pickle and no lettuce?
No, sir. Hold the pickle, hold the lettuce. Special orders don't upset us, so we ask you that you let us serve it your way.
Oh, but in that case, could I have the other Whopper with extra ketchup?
Sure. We can serve your Ruby Whopper fresh with everything on topper. Any way you think is proper.
Now that's the way to do things, our way.
Have it your way, have it your way, at Burger King.
How many remember that commercial? Yeah. Keep your hands up. Now look around. Everybody with their hand up is over 50 years of age. If you're ever wonder how old that person is, if you just look, you can find it out this morning. Have it your way. If you kind of missed a few of the words, let me read them to you. Hold the pickles, hold the lettuce. Special orders don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us serve it your way. We can serve your broiled beef Whopper, fresh with everything on topper. Here's the punchline. Any way you think is proper, have it your way. You probably have a brain virus this afternoon. You won't be able to get the hold the pickle, hold the lettuce out of your mind. And as you do, you hopefully will remember the thrust of the message this morning. I want to suggest to you, we live in a world saturated with Burger King theology. Where people want to have God served their way. Where people want to have God the way they think and they prefer Him to be. When we do that, we become an Exodus 32 people. I want to give you just 3 ways that can happen, just kind of quickly this morning. One is that whenever we elevate one attribute of God above all the others, that's having God our way. That's Burger King theology. When you and I treat God and the attributes of God like kind of a cafeteria plan, and so we're in line at the cafeteria, and we all know how it works. You know, you got your plate, your tray, you move it down the line, you go, oh, I like that. So you reach, you put it on your plate, and you kind of, well, I'm not really interested in that or that, and then you reach, you take another, And so basically, at the end of the line, you've only put on your plate what it is that you like, what it is that you find appetizing, and you've skipped over a bunch of things. When we do that with God, we've fashioned, maybe not a golden calf, again, sitting on the coffee table, but we have fashioned a graven image. We have edited God down to what we prefer. And so it's so easy to go through the kind of cafeteria line. It's so easy to walk up to the counter with a Burger King mentality and to say about God, yeah, I'll take His love, and yeah, I want a little bit of blessing in there, but now the accountability, leave that off. Yeah, I want his gentleness, and I want his embrace, and I want his forgiveness, but the judgment part, leave that alone. I want God my way. And so we pick and choose the attributes that we want him to have and leave the others off to the side. When we substitute God's I am for God should be, we have become an Exodus 32 people. You know, the greatest theophany in the Old Testament occurs in Exodus chapter 3, and it's there in the burning bush where Moses is commissioned, right, to go and to speak to the Hebrews if they're going to get out of Egypt. And then after that, he's going to go to Pharaoh and all of that kind of stuff. And you remember Moses asked God, who shall I say sent me? And God does not say to Moses, well, you just tell them whomever you want me to be has sent you. God says, tell them the I am has sent you. And so whenever we substitute the God of I am for the God that I think should be, we have tooled spiritually, mentally, a graven image. And here's a third one. We could go on with a few more. If God never angers or contradicts you or me, that's a pretty good indication we've crafted a graven image. The great German theologian Karl Barth said, if God doesn't make us mad, we're not worshiping him but ourselves. If our God never contradicts us and always likes what we like and hates what we hate, he's not the real God. All we've done is deified our preferences and called them the personification of those things, God. It's a pretty powerful statement. You know, if the God that you worship this morning doesn't challenge you, doesn't convict you, doesn't change me, that's a pretty good indicator that we haven't embraced God as he really is, but we've tooled a graven image and edited him down to what we prefer him to be. Now, as a footnote this morning, where else are you going to go and hear a Burger King jingle and hear Karl Barth quoted? That's pretty good stuff. You with me? We live in a world that's saturated with this Burger King, have it my way mentality when it comes to God. And so I just want to kind of give two warnings biblically about what happens when we do that. Because at first it can seem really good. If I had kept going in Exodus chapter 32, you know what happens after they have this little gathering the next day? Man, they just have a party. They just have a party. It's a big time party. And you know, when you and I edit God down, when we tool him and we craft him and we mold him into what we want and prefer him to be, that can seem initially like really good. But the problem is that what happens, the end result is spiritual deformity, and the new God is never God enough. The new God is never God enough. Because when you and I do that, we diminish God, and that diminished idea or understanding of God that we have, I submit to you, will never hold up in the long run. Will never hold up in the long run. It certainly didn't for the folks in Exodus 32. I want to speak frankly this morning about what, in my opinion, and I think I stand on solid biblical ground with this, about a spiritual deformity, a graven image that is infected the Western church in the United States. It's called prosperity gospel. I want to say to you two truths. It's neither one. It will not make you prosperous, and it is not the gospel. But a lot of times when folks turn on the television, what they hear, the face of Christianity, is this idea that if you just pray the right way and do the right things and give an amount of money to a right cause, that you're going to have wealth and you're going to have influence. Prosperity gospel. That's a graven image. That's a graven image. And the problem with that is not only is it unscriptural and so counter to the teachings of Jesus Christ, when that doesn't happen, guess who gets blamed? Not the guy who peddled it, God. Because when that doesn't kick in, when the formula doesn't work, then folks all of a sudden think, well, gee, God isn't God. I did all the right things. I did what I was told to do, and I'm not debt-free, and my car isn't paid off, and I didn't get the promotion at work. God gets blamed. God gets blamed. When it comes to this matter of prosperity gospel, and it is so popular, it's Burger King on steroids. It's Burger King theology on steroids. I just submit this to you, and then I'll kind of leave it alone, because I could go on. Why would, this would be my challenge to the prosperity gospel folks, why would what they are claiming is God's richest blessings of wealth and influence be, according to the witness of the New Testament, the two most powerful temptations of Satan? The answer is, they're wrong. They're wrong. God's not going to use as His greatest blessings in your life the very exact same things that the enemy wants to bring down your life with. It's a graven image, and it is so out there right now. And the problem is, the end result is, the God of prosperity gospel is not enough. It will not stand. It will not endure. It will not see anyone through. But it is a retooled, refashioned, edited down, diminished, deformed version of God. We really ultimately have two options. We can either shrink God down and end up carrying God. So that's what we'll do. God will become so diminished at that point that we find we need to carry Him. Or we can humble ourselves to God, to who He really is, all of His attributes, submit ourselves totally to the entirety of His lordship, and find that He will carry us. Those are the two options. No wonder Moses got so mad when he came down off the mountain and realized that the God that he had encountered on the mountaintop was this perverted, edited down God at the bottom of the mountain. And he knew where that was headed. And he knew where that was going. Little story from J.D. Greer, whose books I read from time to time. He tells this wonderful story that he's at an airport and he's waiting to board the flight. And so he's there in the waiting room area, and of course other people are there, and everybody's waiting to get on the same plane, and so on and so forth. He happens to sit down beside this lady, and so they strike up a conversation, and she asks him eventually, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm a Baptist pastor. And she said, oh, that's good. She goes, I like Christian things. And so it kind of perks his attention up a little bit. And he's wanting to be nice and polite to this lady. And so he said, oh, really? And she said, oh, yes. She goes, she lived in a coastal community. She said, I got a little shop at the beach. And she said, basically what I've done, I just kind of taken all the good things from everybody's religion and I just kind of sell them in my little beach shop. And he said, oh, okay. And she said, yeah, she starts digging through her purse. So she's rattling around in her purse and she brings out a cross. And she goes, yeah, I just carry this around. This is good luck. And so J.D. Greer went, okay. And so she said, yeah, she goes, I'm not worried at all about this flight because I've got this right here in my pocketbook. And she goes, and now I know I'm even in double good hands because I'm flying with a Baptist pastor. He says, about that time, there's a couple that's sitting across the aisle from them in the little waiting area, and the woman is reading the newspaper, and she puts the newspaper down and looks to her husband, and she said, honey, I told you we didn't have anything to worry about. I just read that our horoscope says right here we're going to be in safe hands today. Now, he's not making this up. And the little lady hears what this couple across from them has said, and she said, oh, that's just wonderful. She said, listen, J.D. Greer, did you hear that? Why, their horoscope says that they're going to travel safe today. I've got my little lucky cross. If you're a Baptist pastor, well, we're just doing great. And he said, about that time, a man that was sitting behind them who had overheard the conversation, he said, I can even add to it. He said, I've got my St. Christopher's travel medal right here in my wallet. He said, about that time, the ticket agent announced that the plane was boarding and said, everybody got up and standing in line. And he said, before he and the lady parted in the line, she looked at him and she said, you know what? I just feel so good about this flight and this day and all the people I've met here in this waiting lounge. She said, horoscope is good. He's got his St. Christopher's medal. You're a Baptist pastor. She goes, I'm going to give you my lucky cross. You just carry it with you wherever you go. I just want to say to you, there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of that out there. There are a lot of people out there who've got a golden calf. They've edited God down to what they prefer Him to be. They've weeded out the attributes that they don't like. They've said God as He should be, not God the I am. And they're carrying an insufficient God around with that. So you and I have two options this morning. We can either go up to the counter, just like that lovely family did at Burger King, and say about God, I want Him my way, and here's how I want Him, and we put our special order in. When you do that, here's the warning. The God you've crafted will be way too small, will not provide you with satisfaction, will not provide you with security, will not be sufficient. Or we can stand before God, not as we prefer Him to be, but as He really is, and submit to Him in totality, to the Lordship of God as revealed in Jesus Christ, revealed in Scripture, revealed through the Holy Spirit, and said, now, that's the God I'm worshiping. That's the God I'm serving. Not as I want Him to be, but as He really is. And when we do that, then you and I have entrusted ourselves to a God that is sufficient, that is capable of carrying us not us carrying him.
Amen.
Let's pray together. Gracious God, oh my goodness, how much Burger King theology there is out there. And yet we come into your midst this morning asking that we submit ourselves today to your lordship as you are, as the great I am, as the person who incarnated himself in our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, as the God whose Spirit now dwells within us and among us and surrounds us.